Here's a counterintuitive thing that I've seen just out there working with companies, right? What they tend to do is they tend to bring in an external person into the organization to be chief innovation officer. Now, it's a fascinating choice, right? Because one of the benefits of being an external person is you don't get caught up in the previous culture of the organization. You're able to bring in fresh ideas. You're able to not get caught up in some of the stuff that the company has done before or has attempted to do and fail. So this ability to bring in a fresh perspective is definitely one of the benefits of having a chief innovation officer or an innovation leader or a head of innovation that's coming in from the outside. But here's one of the biggest challenges that you have inside an organization. It is difficult to drive change in an organization if you're not viewed as a legitimate and central member of the group. Like having legitimacy inside an organization is really critical for driving change. And so when you really stop and think about it, if you've just arrived in an organization, how much status and legitimacy do you actually have? Another problem as well that's added into the mix is that people that are hiring this chief innovation officer or head of innovation are not giving them enough time to build that legitimacy, status, relationships, and become a central member of the organization, right? They're not being given enough time. They're expected to start producing results straight away with whatever transformation that they're working on. And so if you're like a new person to a team, before you're allowed to do anything weird or different, you have to first prove that you're a central, good member of the team. This idea is related to this notion of idiosyncrasy credits. And idiosyncrasy credits are basically how much permission your group is giving you to be different from the norm. Now, if you're someone coming in to drive innovation or drive some kind of transformation, you're already trying to change the group norm or do something different from the group norm. Now, if you're trying to change the group norm or do something different from the group norm, but you have no idiosyncrasy credits because you're not an old member of the group, you haven't proven yourself to be a good member or a good team member, how do you do that? How do you get permission to drive transformation? How do you get buy-in for innovation if you're new to the group and you don't have any credibility at all? What's fascinating about what the research shows is that the best way to build this credibility or this legitimacy or to get these idiosyncrasy credits is to actually be a pretty normative group member. That's the best way to build that kind of relationship, build that status, is to be a normative group member, which means you have to do things that help the group's goals over a long period of time. You have to be good at building relationships and supporting other people over a long period of time. And the more and more you're viewed as a really good group member, the more and more idiosyncrasy credits you get, which then allow you to be able to do something different from what the core group expects. And so that's why I believe that sometimes it can be a mistake to bring in an external head of innovation, an external chief transformation officer. They just don't have the legitimacy and the credibility to actually drive the change that you're asking them to do. And here's what's fascinating about this. We tend to conflate status with legitimacy. So let's say somebody has accomplished something quite amazing outside. So, they're a startup founder, they had a really great exit, or they're like a leading thinker in the area of transformation, or they're somebody well respected in the industry on that particular topic. So you bring them in because they're like a high status person. But just because they're a high status person doesn't mean that they have legitimacy to drive change in that organization. So people will give them begrudging respect because they've accomplished things that are undeniable, but they will still withhold a little bit of that respect, because one of the things that people don't want are people that have power without legitimacy. People really hate people who have power in an organization without legitimacy. So even having the title Chief Innovation Officer or Chief Transformation Officer doesn't give you legitimacy. It just gives you status. And when you exercise too much power to try and push people, when you haven't yet built legitimacy inside the organization, you will face resistance. And so if we do appoint external people into the organization, we have to then give them time to build that legitimacy, build those relationships before they can drive change. And one way to build those relationships is to maybe help a couple of business units, a couple of business leaders accomplish goals that are bothering them right now. Then we're able to actually build the legitimacy that then allows us to drive change later, because now we've built the image that we're a good team member. This is something that we really need to accept and acknowledge. And it's a bit of a paradox, right? Being a really good team member or being viewed as a core member of the group is the best way to actually drive change. So it's important that we think about how we build legitimacy, how we build status for our movement before we actually start driving the actual change itself.